Hello, and welcome back to Beyond the Plot podcast, where we dig deeper into the stories, inspirations, and creative minds behind your favorite authors. I'm your host, Lisa, and today we're joined by the wonderful Sophie Cousens, author of charming, heartfelt rom-coms that keep readers smiling long after the last chapter. We're exploring her writing process, the sparks behind her ideas, and what really goes on beyond the plot. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to follow the show and leave a review. It helps us bring more amazing authors your way. Now, let's welcome Sophie Cousens. Sit back, tune in, and here's Sophie's story. Thanks, everyone. Hey, Sophie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
My privilege. I'm very excited to have you today, and I know that our audience will be extremely excited to get to know you a little bit more. Really appreciate you taking the time out to jump on this episode with us. So do you want to just give a little brief overview of yourself, a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yes. So I am a rom-com author. I have written 6 books to date. My first, this time next year, was a New York Times bestseller and was adapted into a film, which was #1 on Netflix UK when it came out. And yeah, I continue to write and be published all over the world and tell love stories that hopefully resonate and connect with readers.
Yes. Well, I love reading your books. Like, honestly, I read, what did I read the other day? I read Is She Really Going Out With Him, which I loved. And I think I read it within like 2 days, because I am one of those people, when I open a book, I literally spend any kind of free moment I have in between work and kids, and I'll be like, I'm just going to go to bed and read this now. And then I have to have a break after that, because otherwise my life just gets so consumed. But I've finished that one very quickly, and I thought it was very easy to read and very good.
Oh,
Another
thank
classic.
you. Yeah, I've had such a lovely response from that one, and I think I had a lot of fun with it because it's about our heroine Anna, who's 38, and she's just not really up for dating. She's just been
Yes.
divorced, and she's got 2 kids. She's got a busy life. She dabbles with internet dating and finds it horrendous. And I think a lot of readers have just really connected with how relatable that feels, and
Yeah.
how, especially as a mum, you don't necessarily put kind of dating and romance and finding another happily ever after at the top of
Yeah.
your to-do list.
Yeah.
And it's been so lovely seeing the response of people who've just sort of said that character really spoke to them and they found it fun. And the fact that she kind of put love down the list to
Yes.
be after everything else kind of makes her so relatable, I think, as a heroine.
Yeah. And do you know what I really loved about it is that also she kind of like found herself, right? Not only with love, but she then had like these new friendships that she'd made like along the way. And I think it's really refreshing when you're like 38 and you think life's not over. 'Cause, you can still be yourself and find new friends and love out there. So I thought it was really nice.
Yeah, totally. And I think actually, I've had a few friends who have got divorced in their late 30s, early 40s. And I think all of us are quite scared of it because you feel like it's a failure and you don't see it
Mm.
depicted very much in romantic films and books. And actually, what's been quite refreshing for me to see is those friends who it really is another chapter of their lives. And
Yeah.
it's obviously very heartbreaking. It can be very difficult for everyone involved. But there is this silver lining of kind of finding yourself again and meeting new people and having to have a completely new chapter that can be very reinvigorating. And I think that's what I really wanted to depict with Anna.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I loved it, and I know, heaps of people. I've actually given it to my mum to read now, so
Oh,
I'm
good.
sure she'll love it as well. um, so I would love to kind of take it back. I always ask this question around like, when did your writing journey begin? Because I was doing some research, digging a little bit deeper, and obviously, I know that you were in TV production, etc. But I would love to kind of just focus on the writing part and how that kind of intertwined into your career and to where you are now.
Well, I think I've always wanted to write. I think even since look, everyone says that. Every child, dabbles in short stories and, is sort of precocious about sort of like reading out their short stories. But I think that for me, I was still writing them as a teenager, like like rom-coms for my friends at school, which were basically fan fiction reality bites,
Yeah.
before I even knew that fan fiction was a thing.
Yeah.
But that's sort of probably where it started. And I would say I was never like the best at English. I moved schools a lot. I probably missed various classes on the basics of grammar and what a
Okay.
verb is. But I would say that I've always really enjoyed telling stories and watching stories and reading stories. And so that's just something that I've always come back to in my life, even when I've had, been at university or gone off to work in TV. I was a TV producer, but between that, I was always sort of having ideas for books and sort of,
Yeah.
it was always the dream.
Yeah.
And I kind of, when I was 27, I think I thought, right, okay, I'm going to really commit to this now, and I'm going to take a little break from work, and I'm going to finish my first novel, because it's really hard to, however much you enjoy writing, to actually
Yeah.
get a finished manuscript done is incredibly difficult. And I actually moved to Berlin for 6 weeks
Oh, wow.
because I wanted to have no distractions from the TV. Because I was like, oh, I don't speak German, so if I'm in Berlin, I won't be able to watch telly. So this is how I'm going to fix my life. And I managed to write my first manuscript. I wrote a science fiction YA book,
Oh, wow.
and then I sent it off to 30, this was also, back in the day where you actually printed it out and sent it, physically
Yeah.
to publishers and agents. And I was so excited. I was like, this is going to be it. This is going to be the beginning of the rest of my life. And it wasn't, because everyone said, no, thanks, but no thanks. And I think any author probably has a tale of rejection in their past, but
Yeah.
it kind of takes a little lot to come back to, because obviously it's the first book I wrote. I haven't done a creative writing MA. Everything is a learning process.
Yeah.
But to kind of pick yourself back up from that and try again, um, is kind of what makes writers, I would say. And it
Yeah.
took me a few years. But when I found myself having a little break again, and a competition came up that was called Love at First Write, which was writing
Yeah.
the first chapter of a romantic comedy. And I did that, and I won the competition. And then I got an agent, and she sort of helped steer me, because she sort of said, look, your voice and your humor, I think, is really suited to romantic comedy.
Yeah.
So I gave up my dream of being a sci-fi writer. But yeah, so I think every author has this sort of wends and turns of kind of coming back to it
Yeah.
and trying. And, there is so much luck involved as well, because I know other authors who have been so sure that they were going to be writers, and that they had lots of rejection, and they just kept going and they kept going. And to be honest, I don't think I would have had that staying power. I think if I'd had
Mhm.
another rejection, I just would have thought, oh, well, not, this isn't for me, and I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
So I feel very grateful that I had, I won that competition at the right time. I got my agent at the right time, and I
Yeah.
I had those little bolsters of confidence just when I needed it to keep going.
Yeah. So with the competition then, once you won it, did you instantly get an agent, or did you have to submit more work? What did that look like for you?
So the prize was to be published as an ebook. So that was my first. It
Yeah.
was called How to Get Ahead in Television, and it was kind of a rom-com about working in TV.
Yeah.
And based on that, I then approached a lot of other agents and said, look, I've won this competition. I'm going to be published as an ebook. So I already had a publishing kind of contract.
Yeah.
Would you represent me? And spoke to a few people, and yeah, found my lovely agent Claire. And that was, that really set me on the path, because then that book didn't really come to very much. But having then got an agent, they're really kind of with you for your career, and they've taken you on because they believe in your future and in your voice. So
Yeah.
um and then again, even after that book, it was a couple of years of me trying other things until
Yeah.
this time next year came about. And then that sort of, really went big, and that was big enough for me to kind of quit my day job and focus on being a writer, which I've done since 2020. But that again was so many factors that came together to make that happen, that I'm, very grateful for.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you there, because a lot of authors, especially when they first start out, they're having to juggle, right? Their work and writing, being an author, kind of part time. And I think even now, until you can fully say, yeah, I can have a full time wage doing this, it's quite daunting, isn't it? I don't want to take that step. So you were juggling both, right? You were still doing TV producing and then writing, what, until about 2020?
So I'd left TV by that point, and we'd moved to Jersey, which is where I live now, which is
Yeah.
a very small island in the Channel. And I had 2 children, and then I really wanted to go back to work. I didn't think my personality is cut out to be stay-at-home mum with a baby and a toddler, so I just needed
Get that.
a little bit of other brain to start working again. And I didn't know what I was gonna do because I couldn't work in there's no, big shiny floor TV shows in Jersey, unfortunately. So I went to work for an arts charity, which was great as a kind of getting back to work, but it
Mhm.
wasn't really the ideal job for me. It was a big step down from what I've been doing in television. And I had a bit of a wobble of like, maybe we can't live in Jersey if there's not really an industry that's kind of playing to my skill set. And, I used to run a team of 100 people, and now I'm, just on a very small team earning hardly any money. And I didn't really see where my career was going to go. Sorry, I was going to turn my battery. Um, and that's when Claire came to me and said, look, I think you should write a rom-com. There's this
Mhm.
opportunity. And I knew then that I really had to commit, because if I was going to make writing a feasible career for myself, this was the time to do it. Me and my husband, I would need to have an income. I would need to work. And
Yeah.
this was suddenly realizing, well, if I can't do TV anymore, we'll either have to leave the island, or I'm going to have to go and get a proper job, like where I have to do like really hard work and
Yeah.
spreadsheets and stuff, which I'm really would not suit me at all. Um, so yeah, so for that year, I sort of did my job at the arts charity, had 2 children, wrote in the evenings,
Yeah.
and my only aim was just to sort of get published properly, have a book
Yeah.
in my hand, because I'd never had that for the first for How to Get Ahead in Television. And then I remember when I handed it in, and I got a call from my agent saying, there was a bidding war in Germany for it, which meant, it was
Wow.
probably going to sell internationally, which, that deal alone was more than I was earning in a year at the arts charity. So
Yeah.
I just suddenly realized, that was my first thought. I just thought, oh, I'm free. Like,
Yeah.
beyond just the excitement of people liking the book and liking the story, that made me realize, oh, I can do this now. I'd be free to actually do what I want to do and what I think I'm good at. I hope I'm good at, and not have to juggle, because I was doing my job, putting the children to bed, getting, staying up till midnight to write,
Yeah.
and which lots of people do still do. And it's really unsustainable, and it's really hard.
Yeah. You almost get burnout, right? Just kind of,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
juggling all that.
So I remember very clearly that day that I got that phone call saying, because lots of people, you get a book deal and it gets published, and then you get overexcited, and actually it still only sells 50 copies to your friends and family. So my expectations were really not high. All I wanted was to have a kind of printed book in my hand, and maybe
Yeah.
would sell to my friends and family and 50 other people. Um, and then, yeah, and then it was a Good Morning America book club pick, which meant got
Amazing.
huge exposure in America. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was very much a kind of dream come true publishing story in that respect, that book.
Yeah. And then how did it get adapted into a movie? Because I mean, anyone that knows you, I've definitely watched it on Netflix. And so, yeah, what did that look like in terms of you finding out that they wanted to make it into this movie?
So when you first sort of write a book, often a book gets optioned for
Yeah.
film or television, but often those things don't actually come to anything. It's so difficult to get funding and to get casting together and get something made. Um, you get excited because someone's optioned your book, and then the reality of it actually happening is usually unlikely. But with this, it was a lovely company called Black Box who made it, and I said I'd really like to write it, and they took a chance on me as a new script writer. I
Wow.
had a bit of experience in TV, so I kind of knew a little bit about what a script was supposed to look like, but they really supported me in my kind of dream to adapt. And then, yeah, it kind of came together, and we got funding and we got casting. And I'm now realizing again how unusual that is for all the stars to align to actually
Yeah.
have a film happen. But it was a wonderful experience to kind of be able to be involved in the adaptation. And obviously, it's never exactly what you envisage from the book, and there's lots
Yeah.
that got cut for time. And there's lots of things that if I had been directing it, I might not have done, because there's lots of other different people's creative vision that comes in. But that's
Yeah.
also a positive, because you end up with other people's interpretations and humor, and it becomes much more of a team project rather than just, the story that's in your head, which is
Yeah.
very much
Yeah.
what the book is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great movie, and I'm a huge fan of the actor Lucien. So,
Yes,
you
he's
know.
absolutely, yeah, he's brilliant, isn't he? And he's very easy on the eye.
Oh, very easy now. I keep seeing everywhere now. I think ever since Emily in Paris, he's just kind of like his career has skyrocketed, and I keep seeing he's got a
And he's
very
also and he's
British accent
also
as well.
he's just a lovely character. So he's, I mean, all of the cast and crew on that film were lovely, but he just really is kind of happy to be there and just like,
Yeah.
friends with everyone and like really enjoying himself, which is just
Yeah.
so nice to see in, a star of his caliber. So
Yeah. 'Cause that book came out in 2020 and the film came out in 2024, right? So was that
yeah.
process quite long, and what were you doing in between?
So I mean, that is actually really quick for an adaptation. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, for something to kind of get written, get turned around, get made. But yeah, so by the time I did this time next year, and then I've written a book a year subsequent to that. So I did the adaptation kind of at the same time as
Yeah.
writing book 2 or 3. And then I've also written a script version for book 2 and 3, which are in
Wow.
various different versions of development. Whether they'll happen or not, we'll see. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, lots of projects kind of alongside me writing my books.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the main thing I struggle with really is it's actually quite a sort of solitary job being a writer,
Mm.
and you're often on your own. And actually, what I loved about the film was it was just a bit more collaborative and having kind of
Yeah.
meetings and being around people and seeing their ideas. I think as
Yes.
a extrovert, you always get inspired by hearing other people's ideas and other people's, uh, you know, adding in to the kind of collective. And sometimes I do find writing alone for long periods of time,
Mm.
even though I'm kind of living the dream in inverted commas, I sometimes think, oh, my personality is not suited to be this alone.
Yeah.
Where are the people?
Yeah. It's I've had so many people, who have referenced that it's very solitary, and it's tough, like, mentally at times, because you sometimes you wanna be around people, and actually just going out even to a coffee shop to be around people helps rather than just writing at home all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a little shared office in Jersey that I kind of pootle down to just to kind of
Oh,
I found
nice.
I found myself going to a coffee shop and sort of joining in someone else's conversation the other day, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm that woman. I've become the crazy old lady who kind of goes to the coffee shop to try and make some friends. Like, this is a new low for me."
I love that. Do you think an element of, like, your being a producer in TV then has got your mindset to be like, "Well, I'm writing books," but actually you do always think, like, how this could be adapted into a TV series or
Yes, I think so. I think I'm quite a visual, um storyteller. I think when I was writing many of my books, I could see the film in my head, and that might not
Mm.
be how it ended up looking or will
Yeah.
look. But
Yeah.
I think also my inspiration for writing was the film rom-coms of the 90s and early
Yes.
2000s. I'm a huge fan of those stories and those films and how they've kind of endured a test of time. And actually, when anyone says about my books, "Oh, it really reminded me of a kind of 90s rom-coms," that's like the highest praise anyone could give me, because I think that that was the heyday for
Yeah.
absolutely timeless romantic comedies that have really stood the test of time. What was my point? Hang on, I've gone off on a tangent.
About your TV producing,
Oh,
and
TV
then
producing. Yes. So, yeah, I do think that I have an eye to the screen when I'm writing. Um, but equally, some people will always prefer the books, and there's a lot you can
yeah.
do in the books that, the interior monologue, which is always such a source for kind of comedy, is quite challenging to interpret on the screen,
Mm.
actually.
Yeah.
And they are really different skill sets, writing script to writing prose.
Mm.
And it's something that I've been learning a lot about, actually, as I've gone on in both industries. And yeah, I'm learning all the time. Kind of some things that work in one don't necessarily work in the other.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great skill to have, right? Because I wouldn't have a clue when it comes to that. But you can see whenever you read a book and then watch it, whether it's a movie or TV series, you can see that it's different. And sometimes if I've read a book, I don't necessarily want to watch the movie
Yes.
because I have my own version in my head of like what those characters or who they are and what it looks like. And then sometimes you watch the movie and it's portrayed very differently, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know the story who's listening, so this time next year, it's basically about two characters, Minnie and Quinn, who were born on the same day in the same hospital, 1 minute apart. And their lives are sort of interconnected, and you see through the years that they've been in the same place at the same time, unbeknownst to them. And there's this real sense of kind of fate and the stars
Mhm.
aligning. And it's a lot about also kind of destiny and how people's lives unfold, and whether luck happens to you or whether you make your own luck. And there's all these kind of lovely themes. And I think in the adaptation, there's a lovely depiction of the love story, but because there's so much to say in a short
Yeah,
film, a lot of the kind of flashbacks and the kind of interweaving that happens in the book, where you really see these characters through the years kind of crossing
yeah,
paths, did unfortunately get lost. And so I think that the film is lovely, but I think you've got to, and I think you've got to take it, if you've loved the book, you've also got to be able
yes.
to sort of separate them both as sort of being
Yeah,
something different.
yeah.
Um, and a film will never 100% capture everything that was in the book, because it just can't possibly, because it's not 400
No, no,
minutes long.
no. And I was for those of you who haven't watched the movie but read the book, like go and watch the movie because it is really, really good. And vice versa, right? If you've watched the movie but haven't read the book, go and read the book because I think it just they're different, but they're still the same. And I think you'll
Yes.
get a lot of interest and yeah, it's really engaging. And obviously you've got Lucian who's very easy on the eye. So
Yes.
yeah. um so in terms of thinking about other books that you've written, because you said about you've been doing a bit of screenwriting on the side as well, is there one book that you would love to have adapted into a movie? And if so, have you thought about who would play the characters?
Oh, that is a tricky one. So, I mean, all lots of my books are in various stages of development, with either being written by me or not being written by me, being written by someone else, or being written in
Yeah,
different languages. I can't
yeah.
necessarily say what's being happening where, but yeah. So I have had other nationalities adapting some of my
Oh
books, and
wow.
they have sent me kind of outlines for how they see the film or the TV show, and
Yeah,
that's been so exciting to see, because it's actually someone else. Much as I've loved adapting the books myself, it's also quite
yeah,
exciting to see other people's interpretations of
yeah,
what they pull out of the story, and how you turn a book into a TV series rather than a movie, and how much fun you could have with it, and where the next series might go. So that's been really exciting. But yeah, the good part is definitely a book that lots of people who have read it feel, very attached to. It's kind of my version of 13 going on 30, but it's actually
yeah,
24 going on 42,
yeah,
where a girl who's in her 20s, and she's sort of got no money, got no dating life, got feeling a bit kind of quarter life crisis,
yeah,
wishes she could skip to the good part of her life. And then she wakes up the next day and she's 42, living in the suburbs, married with two children. And that was a little inspired by the film Big and The
yeah,
Family Man, and yeah, lots of other 90s rom-coms kind of
yeah,
coming together. And I would love to see that made. And it's a tricky casting one, though, because the actress has to play a 24-year-old and a 42-year-old. But someone like kind of Rachel McAdams or someone would be
yeah,
brilliant for that.
yeah. She's great.
Yeah, but I mean,
I love that because I mean I loved 13 going on 30 when I was growing up as well, and I think we haven't really seen and Big like we haven't really seen many of those movies be released recently.
yeah, and the inspiration came to me, like, I actually thought, yes, it's those stories about being a child and wanting to be an adult, and that
Yeah,
yearning to have some control back. And actually, having been an adult in my 20s and now an adult in my 40s, the chasm between those two adulthoods feels
Yeah.
just as big to me as being a child and an adult. And the kind of life you're yearning for in your 20s, and you want some financial security, and you want to know what's happening with your career, and
Yeah.
you want to have, um, you know, someone to love, and all of that that you're worried about, versus then being a kind of responsible adult with children. I just thought
Yeah.
that was a really interesting split of life to explore, and kind of what it means to be an adult,
Yeah,
or
I
explore.
know. It's funny, my son says to me at times like, "Why can't I do this and why can't I do that?" And I just enjoy being a child because when you get to our age, you've got all these responsibilities. And
Yes,
sometimes mummy feels like she just wants to be a child again with no worries.
I know, and I say in the good part, I do say like you don't know the meaning of the word independent until you have
Mm,
dependence, because you'll
yes.
never really be independent again. You've always got in the
Yeah.
back of your mind, like, I have to do this for the children, and I have to,
Yeah.
if the phone goes from the school that says someone's fallen over in the play park, you got to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe not fallen over in the play park, broken their arm in the playground.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
and I
That's
think
so
that
true.
as a 24-year-old, I remember kind of wishing my life away a little bit, because just
Yeah.
wanting to find my person and find my career path, know where I was going in life. And actually, there's just such a joy in that period of your life, of the kind of freedom of it, even though you don't have any money and you don't know what's going
Yeah.
on. It's such a lovely time. And it is the whole kind of youth is wasted on the young. And I've actually had some really lovely messages about that book, of people saying that they just are feeling a bit lost in their life and they want to get to the good part. And actually, my book has made them kind of stop and think and enjoy the present. And like, that
Yeah.
is such a
It's so true.
such a nice, sometimes, I worry my books are quite sort of, my husband jokingly says I write airport novels, even though he's very supportive of my career. But, sometimes you think, oh, the derogatory kind of beach read airport novel, you're not exactly writing air and, war and peace.
Yeah.
You're not changing the literary landscape, but actually you can change people's outlooks, and you
Yeah.
can have someone really enjoy the book that you've written and kind of it really enhanced their life. So I think it's
Yeah.
important to remind ourselves the value of all books, and especially kind of
100%.
the joy that, that romantic comedies can bring to people's lives.
Yeah. And people can relate to them. I think that's what I love about them is that I can just switch off as well. So I love reading, those rom-com books and just, for that period of time, not thinking about anything else. And you just can dive into that world. And it's calming. It's almost like, that calming scenario where you're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go and read this and forget about all my woes for a little while.
Totally. Yes, totally.
um, so what kind of inspires you, with these books? You've said 90s rom-coms. Is there anything else that inspires you or any one particular that inspires you?
So I think, meeting people and hearing their stories and their romantic, conundrums or love life or stories is always really inspiring. And I think, with this, my second book, Just Haven't Met You Yet, that was very inspired by Jersey, where I live. The island is very much a character in the novel. Before I Do, which is like a wedding love triangle book, was a get I was I really wanted to examine the kind of effect of romance, and the kind of very sometimes books and films can sort of depict a certain story that
Yeah,
people don't see reflected in their own life. And that was what I wanted to examine in that book. So it tends to be either a situation or an idea or a character with,
yeah,
is she really going out with him? I really wanted to look into divorce and
yeah,
an older heroine, and this idea of like a kind of, second chance, second beginning. So that's kind of where it tends to start. And some ideas just drop on my lap out of the
yeah,
blue, and others
yeah,
I really have to work at and kind of unpeel the onion, so to speak, to kind of find out what the real bones of the novel is.
yeah,
Um, Or for example, Just Haven't Met You Yet, which is actually about a girl who picks up the wrong suitcase at the airport and then decides that she's in love with the man whose contents, because everything in the case
Yes,
he
yeah.
has the perfect, clothes and the perfect book that she's reading and all of these things that make her feel like the universe is directing her towards this suitcase owner. That actually happened to a friend of mine who came to visit us in Jersey, in terms of they picked up the wrong suitcase. They
Oh,
didn't
wow.
fall in love with the person who
Yeah.
owned it, but they could see so much from what was in this person's case. And then they
Yeah.
called to organize a swap. And actually, this person whose case they picked up was obviously on, like, sexy weekend away to Jersey, whereas my friend was here with their children and their bag was full of nappies. And, we were just
So
talking about the
funny.
fact that, like, oh, wouldn't that be a great way to meet someone if you actually were, single,
Yeah.
and you picked up their case. And I think in this age of internet dating and kind of swiping, I think people love a story about meeting in real life and the
Yeah.
romance of it, and the fact that it might still be possible. I think people love that. And so I'm always
Yeah.
trying to think about a good meeting and a good story and a good beginning, and then
Yeah.
where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love that concept. Away from the online dating, although I did meet my partner through online dating, it was, yeah.
I mean, everyone does, but it's just not a great
Right.
story. I
No,
mean,
it's
when you
not
say,
great stories.
as
No.
in, in the modern age, it's been great. It's helped a lot of people connect and find
Yeah.
love. But when someone says, "How did you meet?" I mean, to be able to say, "Well,
Yeah.
I was in an airport and I
Yeah.
picked up a suitcase," has more of a good tale to it than
It
like, "Oh
does.
yeah, we met
Yeah.
on Tinder." Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I know. And I can remember what my friends at the time were saying to me, like, "You've got to go online dating, like, that's the new way to do it." And I was like, "Why can't I just meet someone the old-fashioned way?" And they're like, "We don't do that anymore." And I was like,
No,
"Okay." And I always say it's got its pros because we probably never would have met otherwise, and we've
I
got
know.
3 lovely children now, but, um, yeah, I do still like those moments of, yeah, meeting a stranger and, yeah, reading those stories.
Yeah.
Um, so in terms of kind of what's next for you? Because I know you've got a new book coming out. You've got a US tour, right, coming up?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I and then There Was You is my sixth novel. So that's going to be coming out in November in America, and then it's coming out in May next year in the UK.
Yeah.
And that is about a woman who is invited to her 10-year reunion at university, and she doesn't really want to go because she feels like she hasn't really done what she set out to do in life. She was voted most likely to succeed in her yearbook. And actually, she's sort of moved back in with her parents. She's in a job she doesn't really enjoy. And she hasn't succeeded she wanted to be an actress, and she's tried for years and nothing came of it. And
Yeah.
she can't really face going back to face all her super successful university friends. So it's got a little bit of kind of Romeo and Michelle about it.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of fake dating because she ends up finding a perfect date to take as a kind of fake date to give
Okay.
her a little bit of an ego boost.
Yeah.
But there's also a little bit of a sci-fi twist to this one.
Oh,
So that's been quite fun, but also it's been quite divisive in terms of people's response to it so far because of this sci-fi twist. People don't necessarily. I had a high concept book with the good part, and then lots of my books have been quite straight contemporary romance.
yeah.
So this one's a little bit out of left field, but I'm hoping people will enjoy the twist. But it's going to be
I
interesting
did
to see.
I did see your Instagram story the other the other week when you were doing the reviews in the different voices.
Yes. Yes. I mean, some people are very against. I'm not going to give a spoiler about exactly what this twist is,
Yeah.
but it's very high concept, and some people are not on board for it. But I think that's what's exciting about it. I don't want
Yeah.
to write the same book again and again. And for me, those
Yeah.
big ideas, I will always come back to doing contemporary romance as well.
Yeah.
But I think for me, these kind of slight genre crossovers where,
Oh,
as people have said, I've never read anything like this before. And that is what I want to do as a writer. I want to push the
yeah.
boundaries. I want to write something that's a little bit out of people's genre expectation. And yeah, for some people that will be too left field, but for other people, they'll absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So um yeah, we'll see.
Is there a reason why it comes out in the US first?
It's a long story, but I have always been published in November in America,
Yeah.
which works well for me pre-Christmas. Whereas in the UK, you tend not to be published then unless you're writing a Christmas book because there's a really
Yeah.
big there's a lot of seasonal
There is.
books that get published here. And so that didn't really work for me in November. So we've kind of pushed my UK publication to spring because I think actually people like their kind of, spring rom-coms.
Yeah.
So it's just a different market for each territory.
Yeah.
And I've just taken the advice of my publishers about when's the best time to publish. But we'll see if that carries on being so split because it's a bit of a shame because you don't want UK readers to have to wait so long, but I can't
No.
write it any faster.
No.
So,
And so you'll go and do a US tour with it as well?
yes, so I'm going to
Yeah.
America in December. So I'm going to all sorts of interesting offbeat places to go and do chats about it. So that would be great.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. Oh, it'd be so magical to go then in December as well, with it being
Yes, no,
Christmas.
exactly. And I went last year and I did a bit of, I mean, it's quite crazy doing a US tour because you literally do an event, you get up the next morning, you fly to the next place, you do an
Gosh,
event,
yeah.
you get up the next morning, you go to the next place. You don't really get to see, I went to Seattle and I was like, oh, I've never been to Seattle. I didn't even see Seattle. I just saw the inside of a taxi and an airport
Yeah,
hotel.
yeah,
Um, but the US readers, I love the US readers. They're so passionate about the genre and they're
yeah,
so kind of proud to be romance readers. And there's a
yeah,
real community around, specifically romance bookstores, which I'm starting to see happen in the UK. There's a couple of
yeah.
specifically romance bookshops that are kind of opening up. I know there's one in Edinburgh and there's one in London. But that's quite a new thing, and I think we're a little bit behind the US in terms of that real celebration of the diversity within the genre, and
Yeah,
um, giving it the kudos it deserves.
it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, because I was speaking to an author, Pippa, like for the first episode, and we were just talking about how like you can go into a bookstore and they don't even have a specific section for it, and it's like, well, why is that? Because it's such a popular genre to read, doesn't get the kudos that it should do. And yeah, I can see America is huge as well. So anything that they do, everyone, the rest of the world just follows, doesn't it? Just a little bit behind with some of these things.
Yeah, but also I love like there's so many book clubs. I mean, there's obviously book clubs everywhere, but there's book clubs in the US that are such a strong social network.
Yeah.
And there was a great book club who came for someone's birthday. They came to my event in New York,
Oh,
and they all have matching shirts, and they were
oh,
celebrating someone's birthday. And I just thought, God, this is such a wonderful community people have built around reading and
yeah,
around books and around kind of going to events and things. And I know, I was in a book club in the UK. I was in a book club here, but often you meet up and people haven't really read the book and no one's had
yeah,
time and it kind of falls away. And I actually think to run a successful book club where everyone reads the book and everyone's really passionate about it and everyone is actually quite hard. And
yeah,
I am really in awe of people who keep it going and keep that community. And I think people in, the US are really good at it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Um, so just in terms of, you said when you first started your career, you wanted a little bit of silence, and so you went to Berlin for 6 weeks to write. Is there anywhere else in the world that you would love to go to and just write a novel?
Oh, I would. I just actually been on a retreat to Portugal where
Yeah,
it was actually a kind of yoga retreat, but I went to do some writing there, and it was just such a nice. I think as a mum, when you're sort of juggling the school run
yeah,
and the washing and the dishwasher, it is quite hard just to get the headspace you need to have a really long think about what you want
mhm,
to write and the characters. And it's not just a case of sitting down and kind of bashing out the words. You've really got to have some thinking time. So for me, it's just having a little alone time wherever it may be.
yeah,
Um, but it's quite hard to get, with the responsibilities, and I probably once a year I might get a week away on my
yeah.
own but it's very, very helpful and very nourishing. I often go to my brother-in-law had a little villa in Ibiza, and I sometimes
Oh,
sneak off there to work just for like a long weekend or something. And that
yeah.
is my heaven, like looking at the
Mhm.
sea with my laptop. maybe with
Yes.
a glass of wine in my hand. I mean, that is just
Yeah.
that's what life's all about.
Anyone's dream. Like, you just say to your husband and kids, "I need some more inspiration, so I'm going on another trip."
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I know. I mean, if only yeah, we need grandparents to live a little closer. That's what we need. Yeah. But
Yeah. Can I ask what made you move to Jersey?
so my husband had a job opportunity and we thought we'd come just for an adventure. We thought we'd only be here for a year or two. And
Yeah,
then, we had children, and actually it's quite hard to move back to London when you've kind of had the extra space. And I
yeah,
love being by the sea, and there's something very it's funny, I never really thought it would affect me as much as it has, but once you've lived by the sea and you've fallen in love with the water, just being
yeah,
there, I now think I'd find it quite hard to live too far from the sea. I mean, there's challenges about living here because there's not such a kind of writing community, there's not as much culture and theatre and
yeah,
all the things I used to love in London, and I miss my old friends as well, but there is something about nature and, being an island that I've really fallen in love with, and is very kind of nourishing. Even in the rain, just to go and stand and look at the sea and the waves,
yeah.
um, is is something that hadn't counted on falling in love with when I moved here, I think.
Yeah, I now live in the countryside. I grew up here, but then I lived in Australia for like 15 years, then came back. So like had this, then city life, then back to this. And it is like it does take a little while to adapt to this way of living again. But we're right on the coast, so it is nice to have just the countryside, and then you've got the beach, and you can just go for walks, and the kids can just run around. Yeah,
I mean,
it's
obviously, it's so annoying because my children who have this idyllic, I mean, the main thing about Jersey is the sea, the beach, and they don't
yeah,
really like sand. I mean, this is what happens when most children who like get their one little beach holiday every other year or
yeah.
something are like ecstatic to get to the beach, and mine are spoiled by having it on their doorstep. So they're like, oh, I don't really like getting sandy feet. And I was like, this is the main thing about
Yeah.
Jersey, guys. You've got to like the sand, you've got to like the sea.
Yeah. Yeah, because imagine like them going to London now. Like it's exciting if you to go there for a weekend or a day, but like to live there, they'd probably be like, where's the space and why is it so crowded and noisy? And yeah, and it takes you, an hour or two to get to the beach.
I know, but when it's way up, but when it's this weather, I have to say, when it's just lashing it down and we haven't seen any
Yeah.
sunlight for ages, and there's nothing like there's not that much going on in terms of
Yes.
culture, and I do sort of look longingly at sort of all these things happening in London, and I just this is the time of year when I miss
I'm
a big
missing it a
city.
bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what about, because you mentioned about your community there that is much harder where you're living now. I mean, you've obviously met people throughout your career, but do you have like a bit of a base now of like author friends that you connect with and that you meet up with? And
I mean, not as much as I'd like. So there's a little writing community here. There's a few other writers who I know, and we're
yeah.
kind of supportive of each other's book launches and events. And we've actually just had the Jersey Festival of Words, which
Mhm.
is the literary festival here, which is an amazing community. Bringing lots of authors into the island. And as a local author, I did a script writing workshop and kind of chaired a couple of events, and that's wonderful. But for the rest of the year, I do slightly feel like I'm missing out on. There's a big network, especially of kind of contemporary romance
Mm.
writers in the UK who go to each other's events and host talks, and I'm just slightly out of the loop because I'm that far removed. And also in the US as well, like, because I only manage to get there once a year really to go on
Yeah.
tour. And again, I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of the community, not just of other writers, but of readers, and actually
Yeah.
being able to go and sort of, chair events and support other writers and
Mm.
their launches and kind of get to know people in person is a really important part of being an author. And I do feel the lack of that by being cut off, not just that I live here, but that because of the commitments I have with my family, I can't get away as often as I would like.
Yeah.
Um, and the internet's great because you can do a lot, online, but it's not really the same.
Yeah.
Um, but such is life.
I know. What advice would you give to yourself? So if you could, I'm going to ask you two questions now. One would be if you could give your younger self any piece of advice, what would it be? And then the second one would be, what advice would you give to aspiring authors out there?
So I think to my younger self, I think that I would just say keep writing, because I think I kept on writing a bit and then pausing and thinking I wasn't good enough, and then, having self-doubt. And actually the thing that has made me a better writer is just writing. There is no other way to learn. All you can do is read, 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 and then write yourself. And, I think that whether you're published or not, if you want to be a writer, that is the best thing to do, is just to
Mhm.
keep writing, keep learning,
Yeah,
keep editing. And yeah, I think in terms of advice to aspiring authors, I think that it's so hard just to finish a first draft of a book when you're racked by that kind of self-doubt, and am I doing the right thing?
mm,
And am I really good enough? And actually, if you just set yourself a weekly word count every week
yeah,
or every month, you will eventually have a first draft. And when you have a first draft, you can make that first draft better. And I think that the people who end up being published authors are not necessarily the most intelligent, most skilled wordsmiths in the world. They're the
yeah,
people who just prioritize making the time, getting it done,
yeah,
and just constantly improving on their work. And I hope that, yeah, I kind of wish that I'd known that a little bit sooner in a way, because you're sort of waiting for the industry to kind of choose you and
yeah,
tell you that you're good enough, but actually you need to make yourself. There's so many resources, there's so many books, there's so
yeah,
many podcasts, there's so many videos that are amazing tools to teach you how to be
yeah.
a better writer. And it's within your own power to do it 100%.
Yeah, yeah, having that consistency and believing in yourself and doing it for the right reasons as well, right? Because like you said, when you had to juggle working and a family and then writing at night, you've got to have a love and a passion for it, right? To want to actually do it and make time for it. Because otherwise, if you don't dedicate that time, then you're never going to complete a manuscript. And yeah.
Yeah, and the problem is I was quite lucky because I had a deadline quite quickly, so I had to
Mm.
deliver it. But I think for a lot of people I've met who are, "Oh, I'm writing a book," and, I'll meet them 3 years later and I'll say, "Oh, how's your book going?" And they'll say, "Oh, well, I haven't had much time. I've been busy." And no one has any time,
Yeah.
and actually what you need to do is set yourself an end date where you are going to have a first
Yes.
draft. And unless you have written the amount you want to write, you don't go to the gym, you don't socialize, you don't do any of the other stuff. If you
Yeah.
really want to do it, you have to prioritize it as if you were training to do a marathon.
Yes.
And I think that if you're still writing the same book, 5 years later, you know, maybe if it's a literary book, to be honest, it might take that long. If it's
Mm.
really you're honing every
Yeah.
sentence. But I would say the priority is just get it finished and then ask for someone's input and get it done. Because if you deliberate too much over the perfect novel and the perfect edit, and then you hand it in and someone says, "Oh, this is brilliant, but I want you to make all these changes," you might
Yeah.
have become so attached to every word at that point that it's too difficult to do. So you've also got to not be too precious about every
Yeah.
word and every paragraph, and just, yeah, get the story out there.
Yeah. That's great advice. Great advice. So, where can people find you if they want to kind of look you up or get your books? What sites are you on?
So I'm mainly present on Instagram. If you just look up Sophie Cousens, I'm on there. I have a website, sophiecousens.com, though I'm not very good at updating it, but you can buy all my books through my website.
Brilliant.
It's got links to, booksellers in the UK and the US.
Yeah.
And otherwise, yeah, I'd say, yeah, Instagram's the best bet. I keep
Yes.
meaning to do a newsletter. I do have lots of people signed up to my newsletter, and then I haven't quite got round to. I'm not in the Substack kind of like crew yet.
Yeah.
I need to do that first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I love that people are waiting and they're like, you're going to be waiting probably another couple of years for that newsletter.
Well, I just write a few drafts of things on Substack, and then it takes me so long. I just sort of think, I don't know if I can commit to.
Yes.
I've got what I'd rather spend the time writing my books, but then I should just be a little bit more casual about it and just be like, "Hey guys, this is what I'm doing,"
Yeah.
la 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 la, and bash it off.
Just an
And I'm probably
update.
trying to do. I'm not taking my own advice at all that I've just given about just get it done and get it out there. Yeah.
Well, look, I've absolutely loved chatting to you. I know the audience are going to love hearing your story. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing it with us all.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me on. That was lovely.
Thanks, Sophie.